right, everybody. We have for you another very special guest. Everybody, welcome to the show, Tony Parker.
Hey, everyone.
Hey,
How
Tony.
is everyone doing today?
Fantastic. And I got to say, and we were talking about it before we started recording, but you have the best setup with your garage and all the action figures and comics and comic art. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I've worked hard. I mean, obviously, it's one of those I worked hard for things, but I'm very lucky that within my house, I've got the opportunity because you can't see all the bookshelves of graphic novels around me as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I got reference 3 feet away from me where I've got like Eisner's. I've got like nearly the full Eisner library. I've got Black Sad. I've got Astro City. Akira. I got like those supersized volumes. The IDW. I've got like a dozen of those
artist edition style stuff,
editions, which are amazing. And it's something where every time I buy one of those, I've got to also invest into my 401k or my Roth IRA. So that's
nice. That's awesome. Well, I mean, a lot of the times we don't get people with like giant collections like this. So I guess we'll just jump into there. You've always been a huge comic book fan. Like, where did it all start out for you?
Where did it start out for me? Well, actually, good thing I've got that right here.
Oh, perfect.
Uncanny X-Men, number 248, first Jim Lee X-Men. I found this very copy. I was at a summer arts camp in Fairbanks, Alaska, at a 7-Eleven just off campus. Picked up this, and it was just me hanging out with 3 or 4 friends. Went over, looked interesting, picked it up, walked it back, and after that, I mean, I was not tracing in the book, but I was tracing like drawing from it, and ever since that single issue, that's what really put comics. I mean, I'd read comics before. I'd always read like the Star Wars books, which were beautiful, but didn't have my mind just didn't click because I was younger at the time. But I read this and it just broke my brain and I loved it and never thought it could be comics. So then I went to school, graduated with honors with degrees in criminal justice and psychology. Realized that wasn't where I wanted to go, and I always kept on going back to art and went with it. And there's this point where I'd suggest, hey, here's my pathway to comics.
Right,
cool?
Sure.
Yeah, because we were talking about the toy collection. I was like, and the comic collection.
Yeah, either way,
But I would always pick up every week. I'd go pick up comics, and I'd always love reading them, and always drawing, and I've been much more successful. My ego didn't get in the way.
Yeah, right.
Because most people, it's like they listen to their friends, their family. They don't realize that they're paid to tell you that they love you and they love your work.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So much of it was, I'm good. Why aren't I drawing the X-Men now? My friend at the comic shop says I should be because they're my friend, not because they're saying objectively you are at that talent level.
Right. Exactly.
But so thankfully I went from there. Then I got smart, and I found some good instructors out there. It's not the school, it's the education. And I'm a former collegiate comics instructor, saying that. Wow. So the degree, no editor cares about the degree from where you came from. Right. All they care about is what your portfolio is, and if you can produce. So I found the best. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, and was lucky enough to take the instruction from Jim Garrison, who was one of the top life drawing and drawing instructors on the West Coast. Yeah, I don't know why he stayed at Mesa Community College, but he stayed there, and I'm the better for it. He kicked my butt from hell to breakfast, and I learned it was never malicious.
Right.
So I was able to learn so much from him. And from that, it's like anatomy, structure, composition, and from just a huge difference from there, where I was, to where he brought me. Mm-hmm. And from there, I went in, I did, tried out for a lot of the role-playing game companies, sent out like, back when it was 3rd edition, and they had open license, so anyone could produce under the D20 banner, just as long as they didn't use keywords or phrases.
Right.
So it was a huge upsoar of, and you hear my bird in the background.
That's awesome.
She talks from time to time, but it's a huge surge of all third-party companies. So they needed art. So I went through and I applied to 100 different companies, literally 100, maybe 101 companies.
Wow, there are
of
that
those,
many.
I got like 5 written rejections and 1 yes, but for just one piece of artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was from an issue of Knights at the Dinner Table.
Okay.
And so I did that, and from that one piece, was able to use that to go and start doing a bunch of other RPG work for other companies. And from then, I was a full-time RPG illustrator. And it was a lot of fun. Pay was horrible, but it's because there weren't big margins. It's not a malice, so they're sitting on piles of cash. We've got very limited margins. It's a big market, and so there's no malice there. So I don't want anyone to think anything against them. They all treated me nicely. I didn't have any problems with any companies. I've been paid for everything that I've done. But I went through, and so I was when I wrapped up that part of my career, I was in around 150 RPG books and magazines. Had my art in there. Had done multiple covers, like 132 collectible card game art, CCG cards, and among those, I did a lot of Warhammer books.
Okay.
And so did a lot like the Black Library stuff for their role-playing games. And so I'm walking around. One year, I'm walking around San Diego Comic-Con. I look over at Boom Studios, and we're doing Warhammer comics, and it looked like past tense. Like, you know what? I can still use this as an in. So I go over to the editor there. I'm like, hey, I work with Games Workshop. I work with Black Libraries. I work with these people. I know how to work with them.
Yeah.
You do the comics. Yeah. And I was basically hired on the spot.
Right. That's so awesome.
It's incredibly rare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly it started off with fill-ins and a couple single issues and a lot of rush covers. And then I got my first miniseries of Fire and Honor, which were the Tau versus Imperial Guard, which the tough part, they're not the most popular of characters. It's not like Orcs versus Space Marines.
Yeah, right.
So I did that for a while and worked more and more, did a couple more fill-ins, and then after that, my editor at the time said to me, hey, Tony, I know you're looking for work right now. Can I do a tryout? Here's 3 pages. I want to see how you do these 3 pages. It was sci-fi, and he said what it was. I'm like, okay, sounds vaguely familiar, but I'll try it. So I did the 3 pages, send them in, and they get notes back like, yeah, the IP holder, they want you to, an intellectual property holder, they want you to change this, fix this, try this. Like, okay, cool, not a problem. This is a tryout. I want to show that can work well with them. So I go through, send it in, and get it back. Okay, they want these changes, not as many, but still changes, and go through this a 3rd, 4th, maybe up to a 5th time. Like, but it's still, I need the work, and I still did it. And after that, I'm like, they're like, you know what? That's great. You pass. You've got the book. All right. So I'm expecting the script, and then they say, here's pages 4 through 22. What? Yeah. So the first 3 pages, my Eisner nominated "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep" by Philip K. Dick. Those first 3 pages are my tryout.
Oh, okay.
So it was.
Wow.
And I was like, I was so busy because by that point, through no one's any fault, just life happens.
Yeah.
We were behind the scheduling for everything, so everything was a rush from there. So I ended up doing, 22 or 24 pages a month, pencil and ink for the first 11 issues, and then pencil, ink, and wash after I found out I was nominated for an Eisner. For the next ones, I did like 24 issues in 23 months.
Wow.
Pencil ink, then pencil ink and wash. So that was
that's insane amount of work in that time. Yeah,
but it was it's one of those books probably would love to go back and redo just because now I've so much more skills I know what I want to do. But it grew so much from it. It was such a wonderful experience to work on. And the book itself is a word for word adaptation of "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep." Right. For those that may sound familiar to, that's what the movie Blade Runner is loosely based off of. Mm-hmm. So some of the names are there, a couple of things are kind of there, but it's widely divergent beyond that.
Wow.
So it was, and the other thing is, with that, they're very specific about nothing in this comic can look anything like the movie. Okay. So you can't put little nods or little things like that. You can't make it look like Harrison Ford. You can't, like in the first issue, I'd put this incredibly, the first page trying to show off incredibly intricate brickwork that was from the movie that was based on one of the houses. It's actually Frank Lloyd Wright house. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to get rid of all that. What?
Oh my God. You thought you were doing something so cool, and they're like, no.
And I don't blame them. That's exactly what that was the right call.
Right.
But it was to the point where I'd put laundry hanging across some alleyways. Like, no, it looks too much like some kind of a Chinese lantern thing. Yeah. And by that, it's close enough. We can't risk it.
Wow.
But I mean, I put all sorts of other Easter eggs in there. Like, there's a weatherman in there, announcer towards the end of the book. That is Richard Starkings, who did the lettering on it, who's a huge Philip K. Dick fan.
Wow.
The sheep in Do I Know Stream Electric Sheep is actually Dolly, the first clone sheep on record. And I've got a cameo in there as one of the other hunters.
Oh wow!
I put my best friend in there. I think he's the one that sold the sheep to Deckard. And spoiler, sorry, it happens.
Yeah,
the book came out in 1969. It's good.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, it's there, but I still put a little subtle nuance of all the Deckard is left-handed and all the androids are left-handed as a nod to the movie.
Okay.
So it's awesome. A subtle nod of because there's a curious, is he a replicant or is he human? And so I put little things like that in there, but beyond that, it was everything had to be the exact opposite. I didn't even read the issue read the actual book until halfway through the second issue because I was too busy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
so we don't want no lawsuits coming out.
Yeah. So I was like, well, let's see where this goes. Or the book, I'm like, oh, I've dug myself a few holes. This will be fun.
Yeah,
but we can do this, and Ian Brill and Ross Ritchie and everyone at Boom Studios was wonderful to work with, and
that's awesome. And
so that was great.
As far as a lot of artists we've talked to, not a whole lot of them get into the the theory or and you've been an instructor for art too. So
correct.
How do you? What's something that you would teach people for comic art? Just how to format a panel? What are some of the things that you get into?
Well, I'd always tell them the first thing is you got to do it because you love it. There are some people that do very well for themselves, but they're incredibly anomalous. So you can't do it and that's the basic thing off of it. You got to do it. It's something you love, not something you think you can make money off of. Too many think they've got the idea for The Walking Dead, and they don't, or Next Walking Dead, and they don't. Even if they do, they don't. And that's something where you got to do it because it's something you love and you enjoy. But it's and actually do a quick little 30-second story here that fits in with it is one portfolio review years ago. I was going to, and I will never say this person's name, but I showed my portfolio to a person, and do you have at San Diego? Do you have a second? Do you have time? And and it's a guy, but doesn't really limit it down, especially 20 years ago. And but he was like, kind of show my my portfolio. It was 12 page portfolio in a binder, perfectly the way it's supposed to be. And he opens it up. He pauses. He looks at the first page, pauses, looks at the second page, looks at the third page, takes his time, looks at it, closes the portfolio, gently nudges it across the table, and says, "You need to learn how to draw."
Oh no! Oh no!
And it was heartbreaking. It was crushing. It was it was that sucker punch you weren't expecting.
Right.
He was absolutely right.
Oh man!
And I took the next year after that and went through. Didn't touch comics. I read comics, but I didn't draw any comic stuff for a year. Filled sketchbooks with trees, houses, cars, plants, things around me. Took live drawing classes. Took drawing classes from the best instructors I could find. Came back a couple years, 2 years later, showing my portfolio, or next year showing my portfolio. He's like, "This is good, this is bad," and gave me a good review.
Yeah,
and that's really what it is you need to be able to draw. And also told him the story after I was nominated for an Eisner, and he felt so bad about it. No, that is exactly what I needed to hear.
No, yeah,
I thanked him for it.
Okay,
but that's one of the things I do is it's drawing. It's drawing. And it's telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the biggest thing is still is telling a story, because you can have webcomics like the brilliant XKCD, which are stick figures, but they tell a good story.
Right.
So in the end, it's got to read as a story, and then from there, you can work on your drawing, your draftsmanship, but the story always comes first.
Okay.
Well, from the sound of it, you take criticism really well, which seems to be something that people need to be able to do as well.
I try. I didn't always.
Yeah.
It was again. Back in the day, I was a privileged white male who, no matter what people said, I'm a golden god.
Yeah.
And it's no, you're not. No, you need to work on these things. So at first there was, and I was also smart. I'm not saying I'm not now, but therefore things scholastically came rather easily for me. I graduated with honors at college, and I took a page of notes per class my senior year. I spent most of the time drawing.
Yeah.
So I have a habit of picking things up quickly, and that works well for some things, but not for others. And especially with a market like graphic novels and comic books, where you're not competing against the people down the road. You're competing against people across the planet. You're not competing against the best people in Arkansas. You're not competing against the best people in Wisconsin, the best people in Washington. You're competing against the best people on the planet. My competition is in the United Kingdom. They're in Brazil. They're over in Singapore, which all have incredibly talented artists and art skills, and art students and art schools.
Yeah.
So it's something where it's like, oh, you're good enough for that, but for the level you're at, you've really got to be able to accept that you need to work better. And there's that old meme about like the card, you can do everything right and still fail.
Yep.
That can still happen.
Yep.
We all know very talented artists, they just haven't clicked.
Right.
I've had people tell me for years, you should be working for this or that company. I'm like, well, I haven't. I don't take it as an ego thing. It's they know who I am, and I've done some work for them, but it's also I don't have the right stuff for whatever story they're wanting to tell at that point.
Right.
So therefore, that's. But I've also been working. I've worked through the past 2 major recessions, so I'm doing something okay.
Yeah.
But there's you can't have that ego in there. You can't have that. Well, this company says I should be working for them. Like, well, yeah, I appreciate that, but they're not the editor. And the editor, I've got editors that love my work, but it's the stories we're telling, you don't fit what we're looking for. I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm not saying I won't down the road, and I would love to work with them.
Right.
And I will. I'm a character actor. I will change my art style to fit in with whatever the story is. But it can't be. I can't define my worth as an artist or as a person whether or not a singular company will hire me at one point in time.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the tough part with it. Because I've had editors that love me in a company, and then that editor chooses to have a different career path, and they're not the company anymore. So therefore, other style artistic things come in play. Did my art get worse all of a sudden because they weren't there? No, it's every editor has their stories they want to tell, and there's nothing against that. That's a wonderful thing because that gives us some wonderfully diverse stories. And I've been very lucky to work with a lot of with basically every company out there and tell a lot of stories out there. So that's the biggest thing. Is a lot of people see it as, I'm not working for the big two, I must suck. It's like, no, maybe our style doesn't fit with what they're looking for.
Right.
It's like saying Usagi Ojimbo artist creator.
Yep.
I'm spacing his name right now. I'm horrible because he's the nicest guy in comics. I love him to death. I've talked to him. Stan Sakai.
Yep.
Just the nicest guy. And would anyone call him a failure because he's not drawn X-Men?
No.
No, he's got a cartoon coming out soon.
Yeah,
exactly. But he's like the perennial powerhouse for Eisner's because they're all well deserved. Usagi Ojimbo is a legendary book within the comic industry, and it's important, especially now, to accept that there's so many more paths everywhere. But it's also accepting that everyone's got their niche and everyone's got their thing. So even the ego. Back to the main point about the ego thing is like, you got to keep that in check. Because the worst thing you can, and I've seen it all the time from me teaching and from seeing editors get portfolio reviews. Editors hate portfolio reviews at conventions because everyone there has spent the last 6 months to a year preparing for this convention, having all their friends hype them up. They spent all their time trying to do the best portfolio possible, to wait in line for 2 to 3 hours, or to try to get that special golden ticket to see an editor, to have an editor look at it for 15 minutes and say, this is nice, but it's not what we're looking for, and good luck. And have that person go from, but I've been built up this fantasy of, you're going to have me on X-Men next week, to, you're not what we're looking for.
Right.
It's exhausting, and it's frustrating, and people can blow up, or, again, you don't get my art. I'm like, no, they do.
They understand it, yeah.
When you're working for the big two, especially, like that's the major leagues, and if somebody from them is looking at your stuff, like, it's the difference between, like, your tree doesn't look good enough. Not that your Spider-Man doesn't look good enough, because they're getting the best of the best.
Yeah, and not just that, but people look at it as, I'm better than this worst artist. Like, no, you got to be better than their mid-tier and best artists. Yeah. Because they work with their mid-tier and best artists on a regular basis. They've got their group of people that they like working with, and they're good to work with. So therefore, for you to come out and steal work from them, you've got to bring something extra special to the table. And a lot of people don't fully realize that. They see it as, it's a closed click. And sometimes it is. Let's be honest, sometimes it really is. It can be tough to break in. But it's also, with the good editors, it's because they've developed a good relationship. They know exactly what they're getting. They know they can say, hey, I need these corrections. The artist or creator will go done. Or here's the reason it's not, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on. Or because when they set up a book, they've got to set up the printing presses months in advance. So they can't just blow deadlines. So like they're going to take a risk on someone. They've got to be able to work with them. And it's like there's a huge difference between this person spent 6 months for these 4 pages. Okay, now you've got 22. You got 30 days to do 22 pages at the same level or higher. Can you do that? Now, my big suggestion for anyone out there listening that is not currently working comics but wants to, do your own thing. Portfolio reviews are nice, but all the editors read comics on a weekly basis. They've got a huge read piles and they talk to each other. If someone says, "Oh, I just read this indie book over here. I read this Dark Horse book, or this Image, or IDW, or any whatever. I mean, any of this tiers, Valiant. It's like I just read this. This art is amazing. I think this person would be great over on Fantastic Four." They talk, they share. And those other companies are great companies to work with. And it's really, I mean, they may not have the exact same page rate, but they're still great companies with great stories, and that's where you prove yourself. So it can't be that I'm gonna be that person that stands out and gets hired off the spot. Everyone loves that. That's those stories of like, oh, Jim Lee just got hired on the spot. Jim Lee did Samurai Santa. That's his first book. I've got a copy of it.
Right.
And they don't realize people have little things like he was doing X-Men. Yeah, he worked his way up through Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
I mean, he was incredibly nice guy and incredibly talented. And it's not that I'm saying but he always wasn't Jim Lee. He had to prove who he was to the editorial, to the fan base, to everything like that. So you really have to make sure that if you want to do that, you've got to do it. And it can't just be, I've got all these pinups on Instagram. It's got to be, here's the storytelling.
Yeah, right.
Here's how I can tell a story. Because if the competition is between you and Adam Hughes, if between you and Marguerite Sauvage or anyone else of that incredible talent, Marguerite's going to take it. Because not only is she amazingly talented, but she's also proven that she's got the chops to do whatever the editors need.
We always tell the story here because it kind of fits into our show. Are you aware of the writer Stephanie Phillips?
Name's familiar.
So she's currently doing Harley Quinn.
Okay, yes.
I met her at a local Comic-Con years ago, and she was doing a indie book about women's hockey leagues.
Ooh.
And nobody knew who she was, and she was just some girl that had this book out, woman who had this book out. Yeah. And we had her on the show, and we talked to her. And then as the years went on, she's working with Aftershock, and then she's working with Image, and then finally DC hires her. So
it was awesome. It was just awesome to see that happen.
Yeah. There really aren't any. I mean, overnight successes in comics are huge anomalies. People don't realize how small it is because everyone thinks it's an overnight success just means, oh, you haven't heard of them yet.
Yep.
Like if you look at Miko Sayan's original art or his first published work, it looks nothing like what he does now. It's fascinating to see the change that went with that. Right. And there's so many other artists like that where just because you've heard of them now, it's like, wow, who's this Becky Cloonan creator? Huge. She's got a huge catalog, but just because you haven't heard of her doesn't mean that Mountain Universe existed before you found it.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, you have such a huge catalog of books that you've drawn on too. And I know we want to talk about just a few. I mean, my personal experience with you or reading you for the first time was the God of War series.
Yes.
And that for me was a series that like it relied more. Awesome. There's the Kratos. But that's a series that relies more heavily on the art, right? It's not more dialogue. It's like there's a lot of big action sequences and stuff. So how was it working on that?
I loved working on that. That's one. I mean, I work with Dark Horse a lot, and again, it's because I've proven a good relationship with them, and I love working with them. They're great. Santa Monica Studios was wonderful to work with. I love working with them. I mean, first I played the God of Wars before, and it's like, wow, there's a new God of War coming out.
Yeah.
Then I saw the trailer for God of War 4. I'm like, this is a transformational trailer. I need to play this game.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when my editor said, hey, Tony, if you're the God of War game, yeah. How'd you like to do this? Oh, yes. What will it take? Let me know what it'll take to do, and I will do it.
Awesome.
And there are a lot of changes with it from what my initial art style was. I'm a character actor, so therefore it's not because it used to be you draw your one style and you hope you can survive a career. Comics are much more character actor, where you can, if you look at, you have to switch around. If you look at a lot of the long-term artists, they've been able to shift. The artist who did Shock Rockets and Avengers, and Stuart Immonen.
Okay. Yep.
Look at it. If you can find one of his sketchbooks, his sketchbook shows that he's got a wide skill ability. And that's one that, if you go through, look at his books, his catalog, his back catalog, he changes his style to fit what the story is. And I do the same thing. So that's why with God of War, I've got a very open and loose style, because they wanted a very open and loose style. So it, partially because they were doing animation for it. They were doing like animation for it based off of the art. So therefore, it's easier to animate. But they also felt it fit better with the art they were working for. So I modified for that, which was still a lot of fun. And for me, I would love to be able to play with the epic character moments with it.
Right.
My favorite moment in the whole of that first miniseries, because I've done 2 of them, was where Kratos puts his hand on Atreus' shoulder to comfort him.
Okay.
Because when I played the game, I was like, what buttons do I mash to give my son a hug?
Exactly.
Come on, I can do this.
Right. I can destroy these giant monsters, but I can't give him a hug. Like,
Just keep yelling at the boy.
I'm emotionally distanced because I had a horrible parent in myself. Like, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
But a wonderful game. But so I, between that, have those emotional things, and then have the incredibly wildly kinetic action sequences, because that's the fun of it, is where there is no like, I'm sorry, you need to dial that back a little bit.
Right.
Because I'll do like Mayday, where it's like I'd have a pose, and Alex like, hon, yeah, dial that back. This isn't a Marvel book. You need these. So I have to, and she was absolutely correct with that. I completely supported her when she told me that. I was like, no, you're right.
Yep.
I've been cranky for a moment or two because I love the dynamic pose, but no, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
But with that, and then like with the second one that just came out, I was able to go from like just him talking and have I love the anguish, where it's a very dynamic anguish. It's kind of like Star Trek original series Kirk anguish.
Yep.
Where it's not like, oh, I'm feeling bad, I'm a little warm. It's like, I can't control myself. I am so full of these heavy emotions I can't deal with. So therefore I can really play it out with those characters. And that was from the first half of that miniseries to the second half, where he's finding spoiler alert, the supersized kaiju hippopotamus.
Amazing. Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a kaiju hippo. I'm like, are you sure about that? It's a kaiju hippo.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
You sure you want a kaiju hippo?
And I still think I may have drawn it a bit too big for them.
Yeah.
But it was like, no, if we're going kaiju hippo against Kratos, it is. I want something that is huge. I want something that, when he goes up against it, it's a challenge, and because otherwise, an 8-foot, like a 10-foot tall hippo, not that dynamic for the reader.
Right.
But having something that's 80 feet tall,
that's a little different.
Yes, so something like that, because it starts with like a 50-foot long alligator, which is just a lot of fun to do. And that's the mini boss before the big boss.
Before the giant hippo.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So go ahead.
When you're working on these types of books, God of War in particular, Mass Effect's another one.
Yeah.
Like you said, you worked with Santa Monica Studios a little bit, but like, are you guys ever on the phone with Cory Barlog or something to be like, this is how it has to fit into what we're doing with the next game or whatever?
No, because that's what the editor is for. With things like that, you really want singular choke points for contact. Because you have 8 people trying to all get their different things at one point, it can get really confusing and gets a lot more, not tension, because Cory was great. Cory was amazing to work with. Everyone at Santa Monica was great to work with, and they're very supportive. There were very few times they said, yeah, dude, maybe not this time, or hold back on that, or it was incredibly rare. It was usually, oh, I love that. Wasn't what we thought of, but go for it. And most of that stuff is already done by the time Chris Robertson has the amazing script done. So he's the one that has to do all the heavy lifting with that, because he's had some ideas where, I've got an idea for this coming up, and they're like, yeah, we're already doing that. That's in the game. So it's like, man. Because it's all canon and it all has to matter, but it can't be anything that's already takes place in the game. It's got to be something that's canon and supplemental to it. But they've been absolutely great and wonderful to work with from my side, from the art side. But you really need to have that singular point of contact, and this was Patrick Thorpe over at Dark Horse, who is an absolutely amazing editor. He's one of the people like, hey, Tony, I've got a project for you. I'll say, yes, I would love to do it. Well, I mean, if I can't because of scheduling, that's one thing. But I love working with him. I've worked with him a long time. Him, Phillips, Simon, the whole crew over there at Dark Horse are wonderful to work with. But it's important to have those singular points of contact. He'll have his contact at Santa Monica, or 2 or 3 contacts, and here's my point. I don't directly talk to. I mean, I've talked to them. We've hung out like at San Diego, and we'll like do a little like Twitter conversations and stuff like that. But professionally, you really want those singular points. It just streamlining makes life so much easier for everyone involved.
That's interesting.
So but they're great to work with. And the tough thing to remember with that from the creator side is we're playing in their sandbox. When we did a lot of the Games Workshop stuff, a lot of fun playing that sandbox. Beautiful designs, incredibly detailed though, and they're very specific about their intellectual property. Like the Fire and Honor series, when I finished that series, I could tell you how many bullets were on on their specific tank, which name just eluded me. Hellhound on the Hellhound tank. Not because I went through and counted it down, because they were so specific on it. I'd go through and like, okay, I can count down in my head by bolt.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many bolts were on that tank?
Wow.
Because it had to be it's their baby. It's their sand, and they're very well known for making sure everything's specifically on target on IP.
Yep.
And it's the same with Santa Monica Studios with Kratos. We went through so many redraws in Atreus' face because he has got a weird face to draw. Everyone has. If you look at everyone trying to draw that person's face, everything's always a little off on it. It's very difficult to nail, especially when you're going with artistic interpretation. Okay. So many interpretations on Kratos' beard, make sure the angle is just right on it. So they all have their thing, but when it's like bolts versus things like that, it's a bit easier with the God of War stuff. With when I did the Mass Effect stuff, had to nail all those armors perfectly. Had to make sure every location there was nailed perfectly because they're very specific. Is it 6 bands or 8 there? You have to make sure that's right because that's their sandbox. Those are their babies that they've been carrying for years to bring out. For me to throw in like, it looks cooler being a little flat strip there. Like, no, that's not what my job is. That makes sense. To make sure that I have the greatest amount of respect for the property that I'm working on, for respect for the fan base who expects to have what they love there. Because how many people you said, wait a minute, Batman doesn't have those little stringy things on his boots. He only has them on the forearms or stuff like that. Right. Like little things like that. Because that takes you out. That takes you out of the suspension of disbelief. So therefore, no matter how artistically I may modify it to hit like whatever style I think fits best fits the book, I still have to respect that book most of all. So the silhouette still has to maintain. Buckles, things like that, major things, they have all those elements still have to be there. I can't just change it because I think it looks cool for that one panel, or I'm tired, or I'm under a deadline. I've got to make sure that I nail everything the way it is, out of respect for everyone that's involved. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm able to do so many licensed properties. And it's fun because I love the games as well. Each one of these games, I'll spend 8-12 hours drawing, and then that night I'll go and I'll play that game.
That's awesome.
So it's a lot of fun. So I can keep immersed within that realm.
So it's kind of a great transition into Mass Effect because so when you get that call, like we want you to do Mass Effect or you're going to do it with so and so, like how do they, in a world that big and that's kind of still new in terms of IP? Yeah. How do they get you into a story? Like, do they tell you like, hey, we want you to tell a story about this person over here, or are they just like, just stay away from Shepard, maybe tell an ancillary thing on the side, or how does that all happen?
Thankfully, I'm not the writer for that. So that was great. Well, actually, with Mass Effect, they actually had one of the main writers for the series and they're writing the books as well. So he'd come up like, here's a story I want to tell, and they'd have another writer assist them. So here's how we modify that to graphic novel form. And because with Shepard, since the Shepard is the customizable character, we could never show Shepard on screen or on page. Just couldn't because... Again, that's not my Shepard. My Shepard is female, and that's a male.
Right.
So all the other characters, we can, and try to keep them with their most iconic armors or mission-specific armors. And while I was very lucky with the Mass Effect series I did, it was all like I got to tell all the off-screen stories from the game. So like the falling of the planet with the first series, like, oh no, so show up and that planet's been invaded. I got to draw the invasion. Okay. I got to draw all these characters like the the hood assassin character that loses her loved one. I got to tell that fateful mission.
Okay.
I got to tell all these stories about all these characters that are in canon in the show, the backstory they only allude to there, which is incredibly fun. So that's with Mass Effect. That's how they did that. With Warhammer, it's they shoot each other, they blow stuff up, tell stories, people blowing stuff up.
Right.
And then with Santa Monica Studios, with the first one, because initially it was, if you buy the game, it actually has a little webcomic that goes with it. It was the prequel into the game. So here's where we need to lead into the game. And then the first graphic novel was part of that prequel as well. Here's some more story about Kratos and his son before the game starts off.
Right.
So you get a more feel for what their dynamic is, what their life is like before it happens. The last one is taken a bit further back of, okay, he just ended God of War 3. What happens then? So how do we start transitioning from that over to from 3 to 4? But also making sure it's nothing that could occur in the game in flashbacks, or it's very much a balancing act. So with the God of War stuff, the most recent God of War, it was, we want to do one, we want to do it here. They went to the writer and had the writer pitch ideas.
Okay.
So everything is, with a licensed stuff, it always varies. Sometimes it needs to be a direct tie-in, like I did a tie-in for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where my reference for that was the trailer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, they're very specific. It's their IP. They're very protective. They don't know me. They don't trust me. I give them no reason for them to trust me.
Right.
Not that it was bad. It was just, I'm a random artist. They've got a major motion picture coming out. So here's all information we feel comfortable giving away right now because of how important, we're much worried about the movie than the comic. So we tell a few stories with that. It was, here's a story about some of the other monkeys that were kidnapped from the jungle and put in and experimented on. So every time it's always different. There's never a exact same thing. It's always what either like Dark Horse or Boom or whoever else is doing the IP thinks is a good story, or other times it's the studios themselves saying, we want to put something to tie in with this, or something emerging of those two things.
So let's flip over to another side of it. Some creator-owned stuff like Mayday. Let's talk Mayday. So what is Mayday, and how did you get involved with that?
Mayday, actually, got to that after my first creator-owned property with This Damn Man, which we can circle back to.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But after that, Alex like, hey, I like your stuff from that. How would you like to do Mayday? Like, what's it about? It's Russian espionage in 1971. And it's not like the cheesy James Bond stuff. This is all real world. Like, don't trust anyone. Everything is nasty and rough and tumble, and everyone is out to get everyone. 1971. It takes place right before some May Day protests in Southern California. So it's rough, ugly, sexy, Cold War spy stuff in Southern California.
Wow.
And it is very emotional, and it was a lot of fun. It was a weird shift. I mean, a wonderful shift, because I love doing those shifts. Because I know so many creators out there who have been doing superheroes for the past 30 years,
right,
and are burned out.
Yeah,
it's a job. They can do it well, but like, oh, I want to draw like this, or I want to tell these stories, but their success is also their prison.
Right.
Where, well, yes, I'm a C-level creator, but you know what? I get to do I get to play in everyone's sandbox, and I love it. But with Mayday, it was a lot of fun with that, and got me really stretch out in artistic and storytelling things I'd never done before. A lot of stuff like, it makes me a little nervous, but nothing too bad. It's something. It's an adults only. It's not porn, but it's an adults only book. There's in the first 3 pages, see an open rope situation with an old fat Russian guy.
Okay.
Who's like, you see the doodle there and everything. And it's like, through page 3, all right, and now we've went to the LSD laced wine. What?
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Okay, and I'm avoiding other stuff after that, but it's stuff like that where it's not, oh no, so what do you expect from me? I expect you to die, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, right.
It's not the cheesy like stuff like that, or
villains announcing their plot in front of them.
Or like the, oh no, what about my family Americans kind of things like that. It's these, young sexy spies in Southern California and counter spies and all those things.
That's awesome. And
And Alex is a great writer, and so it's so much fun to work. I love working with her, so it's great to work with her with that.
That's great. And like you said, like LSD laced drink and stuff like that. Are you kind of just how does that relationship work? Is there a really detailed script, or do you kind of have your own area to play with that stuff and then kind of work back with each other? Or?
Pretty detailed scripts where I won't be. It's not an Alan Moore script, but I mean, Alan Moore's a brilliant genius. I was very lucky to work with his daughter for the Doors book, and so it's which again was fun playing in other people's sandboxes. And I love working with Rance and the Z2 crew, but it's something where I prefer more the complete scripts for stories like that, because it's one thing if you're doing a superhero stuff where they fight for a couple pages, it kind of resets at the end anyways.
Right.
With stories like this where everything's going to a specific goal, where it's a specific story, if I start going wonky in the beginning, that could throw up the rest of the story as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I may know what's going on, but I much prefer having a complete script with complete stories, like especially complete singular stories, where Mayday that's a complete story. We've got a sequel coming up for that soon, which I'll tell you about in a second. That'll be a complete story. When we did This Damn Band, complete story. So that way you can sit down, you can read it, you don't have to worry about everything being washed out at the end, so that way you don't have to worry about continuity for the next issue or the next miniseries. So I much prefer working with writers like that. Well, I know a lot of artists out there that just tell me word from A to B and I'll put it there. I'm like, yeah, but there may be a lot of nuance there that I don't know about for issue 4, issue 5 when I'm doing issue 1. I want that complete story. I want to know the motivations behind the characters. I want to know why they're doing it. Because then I can put little Easter eggs in there, put subtle nuance and raised eyebrows, or I will even, with some stories, put in ancillary characters look like they're doing something. That way, if we need to refer back to it, I can say, well, good thing I put this back in issue 2. So in issue 8, when they talk about a handoff, I can use a redraw of issue 2 to show where the handoff is.
Wow. That's
but
awesome.
If nothing happens with that, it's still people just doing things in real life. Or with This Damn Band, I put all sorts of red herrings in there.
Okay.
I had so much fun putting red herrings in there.
So let's talk This Damn Band. What is that? That's another creator-owned title.
1971, the biggest. Again, both these books took place in like almost the exact same time, which is weird.
Yeah.
But so I spent like 2 years drawing stuff in the 70s.
Okay.
Like 71, 72. The world's the biggest rock band in the world, Mother Father, accidentally conjures the devil.
Okay.
So it's like the rock band, like, we play Satan, rah!
Yeah.
Whoops, we actually did it.
Yeah.
But they're so
awesome.
enamored with themselves, they don't realize they did it.
Oh, okay.
So they think it's like a shared drug trip for part of it, or they don't realize what's going on because they all got their own little worlds. But Paul Cornell wrote such wonderful characters with it that all the people they're all like snippets of different bands from that period of time.
Yep.
So like if you know the band, like, I recognize that from him, or an amalgamation of multiple characters.
That's awesome.
So it's a documentary rock horror comedy.
Okay.
Because almost the whole book is done in documentary style. So it's through the lens of a camera crew. So everything is like that first-person perspective of interview, running down the hallway, what's going on here, and off like the camera. Anything that's done off camera, which was something I did to myself, is done in an animated style of that area. So the first issue takes place in Japan, and all of them but one take shrooms.
Okay.
And all of a sudden they see the devil saying stuff and things going crazy and demons and all this stuff. And so to represent that, I drew it all in a 1971 manga style.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Which I'd never done before in my life.
Yeah, right.
Even in the script, they're like, hey, Paul's like, hey, Tony, why do you do this? It's like a court reporter. Like court reporter drawings. Like, hey, how about we do it as the art style for that location? That's a great idea. Why don't you do it? I have shot myself in the foot. Yeah. I've never drawn like this before in my life.
That's great. Let me go research it.
What have I done? And I'm on a deadline.
Yeah, right. Doing that on a deadline.
So I did that, and then I throughout the whole series, so I ended up drawing like 6 different art styles in the series. Because each one, like, okay, they're in France doing like the classic period of time. Oh, we're recording in a chalet in France. So they got a period there, so I draw part of it like Tintin.
Okay.
The Hegris Tintin style.
Yep.
Or I've got a Windsor McKay, or then the United States, so therefore I'm busting out the Sal Buscema style. And then after that, I'm not going to spoil what happens. I've got to draw a completely different style as well to show that a change in reality.
Amazing.
So therefore, stuff and stuff like that it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
that sounds it.
It's a PG book, so there are things where there are adult situations, but there's no actual showing of drug use, and there are references to the sex and sexual results, but there's no actual nudity or actual anything actually shown there.
Good.
And it's not by results. It's like, oh no, look, there's nudity. It's like, oh wow, there are emotional results to these events happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, again, Paul did a wonderful job with that. So
that's so
those
cool.
were a lot of fun.
It sounds awesome. I'm definitely checking those out after this for sure. And you said you mentioned that you are maybe going back to Mayday.
Actually, well, I've got two things to mention.
Okay.
One of them is we are going back to Mayday. I've actually drawn it all.
Oh, awesome.
Alex wrote it. I've drawn it. It's all colored. Alex is finishing lettering on it now.
Very cool.
And trying to think if Alex put it out there or not, but we will put it. So we got Mayday, the sequel to Mayday, Brandenburg School for Boys.
Okay.
And I've drawn up I did all digitally painted covers. We've done all the artwork. All the artwork's done. All the lettering, the coloring is done, and we're putting it up. First, we're putting up Mayday, the book itself. Online digitally. I think in the next week or two, and then starting in September, once per month, we'll be putting out the different issues.
Oh, great! That's awesome.
And so I don't know if I can announce where it's at yet. Once I can check my social media, I'll be definitely putting it up there. But we'll put all the work's done.
Okay. Awesome.
And the other side of that is I'm going to say as much as I can say about it, but I've also got my own written by myself, drawn by myself, colored by myself, original graphic novel that'll be coming out sometime in 2022.
Awesome.
So I can't say, I hate saying it, but I can't say anything else about it yet. But
that's fine. That's just telling us. Thanks for that. That's so cool.
I love it.
Is that your first published written work?
Pretty close. I did a 2-page story for a charity book for BIPOC gay teens, I think it was, in San Diego, where I was doing a retelling of this amazing sculptor, then the 1904 or I think 1906 World's Fair, where I wrote that myself, but it's much more transcribing down her bibliography and trying to transcribe it over to this. This is my full first ever. Yep, I drew it. I wrote it all.
That's awesome.
And so I got an editor who's an amazing person, an amazing editor, and I've got a letterer. I've got someone to flat it all for me. But beyond that, I'm doing it all, and it is terrifying and exciting. And
sounds it, yeah.
And it's that anxiety of what if someone comes out with the exact same thing as I do? And one of my editors, another editor, popped up and reminded me. Yeah, remember a couple years ago they came up 2 volcano movies at the same time? Yeah, dude, you'll be fine. Everything's cool.
And it's funny because you bring that up because we had an interview on here about it was a Kickstarter project for like a kaiju story, and Chris, after we interviewed the person, was like, oh man, that's the kind of same, I was thinking about doing kaijus in one of my stories, and I'm like, and me as a reader and a fan of like kaiju stuff, I'm like, that just means I'm going to buy 2 books. you know? Like,
oh, absolutely.
I'm not going to pick one over the other. I'm like, I'm just going to read 2 books about kaijus.
Yeah, and that's the thing with it. It's unless you're, it looks like you're actually finding the serial numbers off of someone else's property. It's going to be odds are it's going to be a different take.
Right. Exactly.
And with mine, it's trying to do it as a very positive character, where it's not dark and gritty, but some character that's full of goodness and hope and being a hero because a hero is a good thing to do.
Okay. That sounds great.
As much as I'm going to say about it, because I think we need more of those stories. It's too easy to get to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love like the dark story, but we're all getting burned out about this person's been through a tremendous amount of trauma, and so the person's resolving their trauma by creating more trauma to more people.
Yep. No, for sure.
We all love John Wick and the dog and all, but there are only so many stories you can have where someone going through and killing bad people.
Right.
And there's sometimes you got to have the stories where there's always a chance for hope and for redemption.
Mm-hmm.
You need that's what I love about like the Doctor Who stories, where like there's sometimes he like, look, you did this yourself, goodbye, but so much more is fighting to try to get for the redemption. And I really want to put one of those stories out where everyone has a chance to show that they can be a hero and allow people the chance to be better.
Awesome. Yeah.
So we'll see how much I fail on it or mix it up. But honestly, I'm going to do my best on it, and what shows up, shows up. And I'm not Alan Moore. I'm not Bendis. I'm not. Not any of these writers, any of these creators. I can't. So I'm only me. So I'm going to do the best I can with it, and remind myself of that mantra the entire time.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty hopeful to me. I mean, I can't wait to read it. You had mentioned your Twitter a little bit. So if our followers or listeners want to follow you and all the cool stuff you're doing, where can we send them?
The best place is for the artwork is Tony Parker Art 1. So TonyParkerArt 1, because I didn't get there before someone else got the Tony Parker art, and that person beat me to it. Good for them. No, they got there first. That's not. I mean, they have just as much right there to be there as me. We're the product. We're not the consumer.
That's true.
Twitter is Tony Parker Art, and Facebook is Tony Parker Art. I've got the best interactions on Facebook, so there's a lot of interactions there. I post art on all three. My Instagram is mostly the art. My Facebook is mostly me talking, and the Twitter is mostly reposting stuff from that makes me angry or makes me frustrated or sad or political stuff.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So yeah, everybody out there, make sure to go follow Tony on all the social media, and I will have in the show notes down below links to his Comixology creators page and of course his website as well, so you can check out some of the work. We always talk about on the show Comixology Unlimited, and actually a lot of the books we talked about today are on Comixology Unlimited. So including Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So you can check those out for free, which is always awesome.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Tony, for being on the show, man. We appreciate talking to you.
Yeah,
and have a good day.
Thanks for having me. I had a wonderful time, and you all have a wonderful afternoon now.